Hey everybody, in today's lessons we're going to talk about angles now. So last lesson we talked about segments, this time we're going to talk about angles. The first thing we need to know are a few types of angles that we're going to see all year. Some, if not all of them, probably look familiar. The first one's an acute angle, and for all these angles we're going to use this x degrees. It's kind of a placeholder. X in algebra and in geometry too. It's a placeholder, so we can plug values in for x. So if we plug values in for x here that are greater than 0 degrees and less than 90 degrees, then that angle will be an acute angle. Same thing here. We have an obtuse angle if we plug a value in for x here that's bigger than 90 but less than 180. If we have a straight line, that's actually considered an angle. It's called a straight angle, and it's 180 degrees. So anytime you see a straight line, and we'll see this all the time, that's going to be 180 degrees. And last but not least, we have a right angle, which is 90 degrees, and we show that it's a right angle by putting this box in the corner. That indicates to us that that angle is 90 degrees. So we don't even have to write 90 degrees here. We can just put this box. It's usually in red. If there's no color on the page and it's just a box in the corner, that means that it's a right angle. There's also special ways we can name an angle. If we need to be able to communicate about angles that we're using, just like we did with lines, segments, rays, and points. We have ways to name an angle. So if you look over here, we have actually two angles. We have, well, I'm sorry, we have three angles. So we have this little angle formed by ray MK and ray MJ. We have this little angle, and notice I'm showing that it's an angle by doing an arc with an arrow. That's just me indicating that's an angle, and that's the angle I'm talking about. That's formed by ray ML and ray MK. And then we actually have this whole big angle formed by ML and MJ. So we have three ways to name angles. Remember from the first lesson, M right here, this is called the vertex. That's where all of the rays, all of the sides start from. So we can name this big angle, this whole big angle, we can name that angle M just by using the vertex. The trouble sometimes with using just the vertex to name an angle is that this is the vertex of three different angles that we just talked about. So we're not really being specific enough when we're talking about which angle we want to discuss. So we can get a little more specific. If we want to name one of these three angles specifically, we can use the vertex and then the points on each of the sides. So let's talk about this first angle that we called out. So the vertex is M, and then the points on either side are J and K. So when we name this, we need to be careful. And this is an angle symbol, by the way. This tells us that we're talking about an angle. So just up here it says angle M. We always put the vertex in the middle of the three letters. So we're going to call this angle J, M, K. You could have also named it angle K, M, J as well. But the important thing here is that M, the vertex of the angle, is in the middle of the name. So this tells us that we're talking about the angle that has J on one side, has M as its vertex, and K on the other side. And the last way we'll label angles is, if you notice, and I'll clean this up a bit, if you notice these labels 1 and 2, those are calling out the smaller angles. Notice there's no degree sign. This is just going to give us a label for this angle, and we can call that angle 1, and we can call the other angle angle 2. So if there's some sort of label in the angles, we can use that to discuss the angle and be specific. So now we're talking about these specific smaller angles. So we can name this angle in 3 ways. The first way is naming it by its vertex. The vertex is I, so we can call that angle I. We can also use the points on the sides along with the vertex. Remember, the vertex letter's got to be in the middle, so we'll call this HIJ, or we can call it angle JIH. And last, we have a label in here. There's no degree symbol, so that means it's a label, not a measure. We can call it angle 12. Just go ahead and pause here. I mean it, pause. Copy this angle to the best you can and name it in 3 different ways. So we can of course name it by its vertex. The vertex here is angle M. We can name it using the 3 letters with the vertex always in the middle. L, M, N. You might have named it N, M, L. And we have a label here. There's no degree symbol. We'll call that angle 7. 3 ways to name this angle. Remember that a postulate, we talked about this when we talked about segment addition. A postulate is something we accept to be true. Just a reminder. And the angle addition postulate is very similar to segment addition. We're talking about taking one big angle, breaking it up into smaller angles, and then relating their measures. So this is our angle from earlier when we were talking about naming angles. And remember, we had the whole big angle, JML, that's over here. And then we had the 2 smaller angles, JMK and KML. So if we know the measures of these 2 smaller angles, JMK and KML, we should be able to add them together and it'll tell us how big the whole angle is. And here's a little note. Notice the lowercase m. We read this the measure of angle JMK. So putting a little m in front of the name tells us we're talking about how big the angle is. And if we knew that, we could plug in the degree measures. So I'll do an example with you, I'll have you do one, and then we'll be on to the you do's. So we're told that RZT is 125, and excuse me, I should have put a degree symbol there. So let's find RZT. Remember, Z, the letter in the middle, is the vertex. That's this guy. It starts at R, Z, and goes to T. So RZT is the big angle. The angle addition postulate tells us that these 2 smaller angles, if we add them together, that they should equal the whole big angle. So I'm going to write that first in letters. So the measure of RZS, if we add it to the measure of SZT, it should equal the measure of RZT. So now we just got to plug in the information we know. RZS is labeled with 4x plus 2 degrees. SZT is labeled with 5x minus 12 degrees. And we're told that RZT is 125 degrees. So now we have to do some solving. 4x, we have a positive 4x and a positive 5x, that gives us a 9x. Positive 2 and a negative 12 gives us a negative 10. We'll add 10 to both sides. And we'll divide both sides by 9. And I believe that gives us x to be 15. So now we could plug x back in here and here, and if we simplified both of those, they should add up to be 125. Just go ahead and pause like you know you should be, and I want you to try this example. Press play, and you can watch me find the answer. So I'm given again RZT, I'm given the big angle, and I have two smaller angles, and I know those two smaller angles should add up to be 110. So I'm going to first write it in symbols. The measure of angle RZS plus the measure of angle SZT is equal to the measure of angle RZT. And if you do this, it'll help you set up the equations. So now we know to plug in 3S for angle RZS and 8S for angle SZT. We know that RZT is 110. Combine these two here because they both have an S. That gives us 11S. Divide both sides by 11, and we get that S is 10. And again, if we plug back in, so let's do that because it might be quick. 3 times 10 gives us 30. 8 times 10 gives us 80. And those two do add up to give us 110 degrees. So here's your two you-do problems. They should look very similar to the ones we've done in the lesson. Name the angle 3 ways, that angle to the right, and then I want you to find the value of G in this angle. Remember, if you wrote any questions down, if you had any questions, write them down, do the you-do problems, and we can talk about them in class.